Yeah, this is great. Yes, please.
5 minutes to learn your name and nobody's outside to be calling. I will tell it right now.
Okay.
So, or we
Shit,
can do a
wait.
workshop together about Russian sounds.
It's Ukrainian. Don't be racist. We're at war with Russia.
Yes, we're going to start. Okay. Where to start? You tell me.
Very little talk, a lot of videos, so you can relax and enjoy your beer. I'm the only one who has to stare at this light. Tell me when you're comfortable. Okay. Can I start, really?
I don't know.
Can I start?
Give me 1 second.
Sure. Luckily, I have a website that has everything.
30 seconds.
30 seconds? Okay.
You can tell us your zodiacal sign.
I don't believe in it, but I don't know. I'm born in May.
Me too.
What's my zodiacal sign?
Taurus.
Probably.
Depends when in May.
Gemini.
14.
Gemini.
You're
Taurus.
Taurus.
I'm Gemini.
Taurus is from April to 20-something of May.
So I'm Taurus. Is it the bad sign?
It's like a unicorn, but only has two.
I don't believe it too, but I have a lot of Taurus friends.
We're good people.
What is
Chinese one.
What year?
That one I know. It's Tiger.
Yeah, that's
Because my brother born 12 years after me, and he has the same sign. That's a even more random calendar. Shall I wait or shall I start? Okay, I'm gonna start now. Can I start?
Yes, please.
Okay. Right. So, in a nutshell, I work with a kind of intersection between the digital and the material. So I look at kind of processes and objects that are between both, but not only. I mean, there is a lot of elements to it. I'm also quite inspired by deception, and I look at artifice a lot, and just like the truth or the origin of myth or an object. So sometimes my research goes direction historical methods a bit too much, but then it comes back to the contemporary. So I'm going to show you a few works that I've done this year, and basically just like kind of what I've been up to and what works led to the projects that I've been researching here. So one of them is, wait, I have to think where to find it. It should be here. One of them is called Algorithmic Oracle, and this work is actually based on a real-life event of a house fire. You probably know about it, Marie-Claire. Yeah, so our house burned down, and I lived there with 8 other people. But actually, what caused it is like a tiny tea light candle, and that happened. It was quite traumatic. But after that, after the event, we've been thinking about actually all the kind of circumstances that led to that point, and with the people who lived with me. So we were kind of speculating. And I actually thought that I'm gonna let a game decide what happened in that event. So basically, I use Sims 3 kind of sandbox game where you can build different scenarios and sort of create narratives. So it's quite an open world game. But if you die in the game, it's game over. This is the only kind of way how it can finish when all your characters die. So basically, I recreated the conditions of the house fire. I recreated the room as much as I could within the game. It's actually the older version of the game. I recreated the room and the characters who were involved. Like in the game, you can give them character and personality traits, etc. So then I actually had 2 initial conditions. So the character is supposed to be kind of myself 7 years ago. Actually would go to the fireplace, light the fire, go to bed, go to sleep, and that's it. And then I let the game decide on its own what's going to happen. So the game has quite a random probability algorithm. So I created about 120 scenarios of potential outcomes, and I chose only 9 of them. So 9 of those scenarios are these, and actually here it's mostly it's a composite, but the final work is to be shown on 9 screens on 9 devices like tablets or mobile phones. So now you can view it. It's only 8 minutes. Oh, this is my favorite part. Yeah, that's it. So basically, every time a scenario happens, we wouldn't save it. So the game characters wouldn't learn what's gonna happen. So this was a kind of experiment. Yes. Wait, that's okay. So the second work I want to mention is also kind of using machinima with The Sims, but this would be Sims 4. This was during a exhibition I had in May with the other two people. It's called Crypto Heaven / Crypto Haven. So this was based on a story of, that's what it looked like, of this cryptocurrency billionaire dies last December, and it's a very suspicious death, so people still kind of investigate if it actually happened because research. But he was running this cryptocurrency exchange, so it was like the idea to centralize some cryptocurrency transaction. And he died taking the passwords of his clients with him, sort of. So here I started speculating whether he's in the afterlife, or in crypto haven somewhere, maybe in Malta, maybe in Cyprus, we don't know, with like the new identity. So here on the, you can see it now, it's good. Here on like you have this like Reddit speculation story that's going on by the people that lost their money there on these curtains, and then there's like edible Bitcoin, there's like religious element of Bitcoin in general, like if you believe in it, you mine it, it kind of becomes more real. And then there is again the Sims video that I was playing with, that kind of deals with both, with him being in both realities at the same time. I'm just gonna play it really quickly, if it works.
Being dead and
Exactly. So kind of both being dead and living with a new identity, because the events are really sketchy. Like they burned his body way too quickly, and he was super young when he died for no reason. So yeah. Now I want to skip a bit, but I have to wait. There was a lot of dancing and pool and existential loneliness of afterlife. So that's him. Like I tried to recreate. His name is Gerald Cotton. I tried to recreate his looks.
what happened to him? Sorry, I didn't quite catch his death.
So he died. Allegedly, he died.
But he's did what? He's a
Well,
Bitcoin.
what?
He's a Bitcoin.
He was a cryptocurrency millionaire, basically. He was running a cryptocurrency exchange.
Okay, what does it mean?
So where people who had Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever, they would be trading money against money.
Yeah.
It's like stock exchange,
Yeah.
but with cryptocurrency. So it's one of the few attempts to centralize cryptocurrency.
Like, cryptocurrency means exchange for money to Bitcoin.
No, exchange from Bitcoin to like Ethereum to different cryptocurrencies. It was exchange only within the cryptocurrencies themselves. And because it was so centralized, people actually would be sending him the money to them and their codes. So they had access to their wallets, to their electronic wallets. And as he's no longer there, wherever he is, they can't access it anymore. So they lost like 120 million in total. Those, I don't know, 300 people. Yeah. Anyway, moving on. Go to the site. You can see all the videos. They're really long.
What did they say happened to him? Like,
Well, they said he died in a hospital suddenly, but then the hospital kind of, his death certificate states that he died in a hotel, not in a hospital. Then they didn't actually see the body. The body was like cremated between India and Canada, where he was from. Yeah, like they said like they cremated in India, but then there is a certificate that it was cremated in Canada. So there is a lot of, and these people are actually trying to do this like internet investigation. They try to go to India and try to find a particular hospital where he died. But then the management there changed suddenly after that. So there is a suspicion that a lot of money was involved and people were paid to just do certain things like they were told. And it's very easy apparently to fake death in India. Apparently there is a whole business going on there. And yeah, so this is kind of the idea where something very material and very bodily meets this world of digital transactions that say they're immaterial, but they are linked to the global resources, but still it's this kind of clash, how when body no longer exists, it kind of all stops in a way. Yes, so that's the piece. Yeah, let's see another piece. Please ask questions anytime you want. This is a piece called, actually this is, now I'm moving closer to kind of what I'm doing here. It's called Flawed Objects, and I looked at like materials that disturb vision, if it's a cracked screen or like an eye floater that we get sometimes. I don't know if you get them, I do. So that kind of reminds us that the object that through which we are viewing the world is actually quite present. Huh? Yeah, the squiggly black lines are trying to recreate those disturbances. It's actually people were asking me like, oh, it's spray paint. It's like, it's a UV print. Yeah, it's quite a complicated digital print. Yeah, and that's kind of the video content that's running on all of those devices. And you can see here there is like sensor dust. You can see actually more dust here than probably. Yeah. So that's like one of the works where I looked at the object itself through which like we view content. Yes. You can hear construction at some point. Gentrification. Glorious. I think it's actually when I filmed it, I didn't realize the construction sound was there because I was so used to it. And then later I viewed the video later and I realized there's lots of like drilling going on in the background. Yeah. Okay. So the next piece, and almost the final piece, is this one here. So I created it in Lisbon in 2017, and this piece kind of started my exploration with this Lisbon tiles and consumerism and fake heritage. So like the pieces at the corridor over there, this was like the prequel to them. So it was created using found objects, and they were photographed, and then later stock image was superimposed on one of them, and then it was printed out as the final work. So here I looked at this, like the ability of an image to elevate an object to something else, to this fake heritage object almost, because like it's not really heritage. And that started exploration into the works that I'm showing over there. Actually, what started all of this, all of these Lisbon explorations, was I stayed in this hostel, and in the bathroom they had this very large paper print glued on white IKEA tiles, but the paper print was like low quality print of Lisbon tiles. So I found that very curious and fascinating. Yeah, so basically now I can show you, give you more info if I find it, about the works that are in the corridor. I think it's this one. Yeah, well, you've all seen them obviously. yeah, so there is this piece. Let's minimize the party music. Yeah, so there is this piece over there that's kind of is a follows to the one from 2017. And here again, it's got this architectural elements, it's got elements of a facade, and then I looked at the imagery, and this fake image is superimposed on that, and that creates like the final product. So again, I'm looking at value of the image here. This actually followed by, no, it's actually followed this photo that I found in Google Maps. That's in the center of Lisbon, and there is like no roof, which I find quite fascinating. Yeah. So then, here again, I was playing. So this is only like the beginning of a research, sort of. So it's the starting stage. Here I was playing with resolution and how like object of high resolution kind of makes you forget that you view the contents through an image or a screen or whatever. And then the low resolution actually is a heavy reminder of this digital process that exists behind the work. Yeah, and then the tiles would be sort of calling back to those architectural elements linked to gentrification. There's constant facade restoration and facade preservation. And then later we look at these. Oh, I closed up. Cool. And then we look at this postcard over there that's got this elements of digital process and kind of distorted view of it. What just happened? Oh, that's it. So the other artworks, as you remember. Then the magnets, that's kind of also where I looked at the digital process of neo materials, and the new materials that are a mix of a original, bless you, original object being altered by the digital transformation that kind of leads to a new object. And yeah, this is it. Please ask questions. Or not.
I thought the Sims thing was really funny because you were trying to like recreate realistic, sort of like we were trying to like recreate real life scenarios, but the way they were dancing to the fire was quite funny because I can't imagine anybody sort of doing this. And sort of like how could you actually intervene with the fire happening? Did you have told them to go away immediately?
Wait, and I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
So I did this two things where she goes in, lights the fire, goes to sleep,
Yeah.
and then I just leave it be, and then I would just move the camera. The game decides what to do, and the game has like a 30% probability algorithm.
Okay.
So it really was according to the Sims character, the character in the game. What they would do if they're brave, they would like go in and start fighting it, and the others were just like, I don't want anything to do
I
with
used
it.
to play it, but I don't remember. So you can't be like go call the ambulance or.
No, they should come automatically.
Oh.
But here I blocked them from arriving actually because they would extinguish everything in 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So I just let it kind of go and unfold on its own basically. But there were 120 scenarios. It took me like a year and a half. It's a lot of filming. So I filmed them actually not directly within the game. I was using this like HD complicated contraption that is like a better quality. And yeah, it was interesting. That's why it's called algorithmic oracle. It's like letting something else, some kind of weird program, decide what are other possible scenarios sort of. But yeah, they're not realistic. They're not. Sometimes like when the death comes in, the other sim is just like, I'm just hungry now. Yeah.
It's a bit like the Matrix.
Yeah.
That you're the person controlling it rather than the people behind the Matrix.
Right. Yeah, but here it's just controlling itself.
Yeah.
It's unclear what it's doing. That's why I use Sims 3 and not Sims 4, because Sims 4 actually, they fixed this fire algorithm. It's really, really improbable to start fire there. And I tried for days, it just never happened, so I thought like, no, let me just go to the one I know. So, yeah. Okay.
With death in this Sim scenario, when he's like they're like on their laptop at the end. Is that the only scenario where that happened?
Yes, I mean, since I've been playing Sims for like 15 years, I've never seen that.
Wow, that's really interesting.
It's amazing. It's like that goes to update its Facebook status.
Yeah.
I really like some of the scenarios unfolded so amazingly. That's why I chose these, because they were the most interesting sort of. But there was never identical repetition. Never. Like sometimes it was Sims like that would pick something up randomly, but it's so rare. It's just you can't control it. It just happens completely for no reason. I find that's quite interesting. Kind of leads you back to this algorithmic idea.
Did you research that scenario a bit and see if anyone else had something
I
like
have
that
no.
happen?
Not that I heard of.
I think it would be interesting to talk to the developers of
Yeah, I tried actually. I tried finding out more about their probability algorithm, but they really tried to keep it secret. So
there's probably some guy sitting there who's, you know, oh, I'm gonna make Death pick up something there, and that happens, and that happens. But it's quite funny how they probably brought their life actually into the game as well.
yeah, maybe for sure. Yeah, no, there is a lot of like in Sims 4, they build in a lot of funny things. The developers themselves, but about Sims 3, it's just they keep a lot of things secret, and there's no way to find out. It was an interesting project, really, and it was the only project actually shown in the US. It was shown in New York in May and in Miami with this platform I'm collaborating with, so they showed it with the other works. So I felt like it's the only project that traveled on the other side. Yeah. But it started with something very, very serious, sort of recreating very traumatic events. And then it led to this like gamification of it in a sense. Then there were like a few elements I looked there also on this idea of quantum reality, and you choose like your choices kind of make up of what's going to happen in actually reality. But also then it kind of, because it should be shown on mobile devices, it also calls back to our screens and how our algorithms dictate according to our activity what reality we see through the screen. So there's a lot of like parallel realities going on our devices as well. Yeah.
Was it a bit, in the beginning, was it a bit of, because you said you weren't sure how the fire had started in the house?
No, we know it's a candle, but it was like completely windless night. It was at night, and then I assume suddenly the wind picked up and it just ignited the curtain, and then everything else happened. So. And like in the room, my bed was next to the window, next to the curtain, so I was actually on the bed when it was burning.
Wow.
And yeah, but like, what do you do with those experiences? You try to integrate them in your work somehow, you know. Yeah, no, it was quite intense, but that's because it was at night. Nobody really actually knows how these events kind of just came to be. It's completely random almost. Yeah. There is one of the scenarios that I'm not showing that are quite similar to kind of what happened in real life, but real life is always a bit boring, so yeah. Yeah, this is it.
I haven't understand clearly what is that vision problem you mentioned, and
Which one?
with the spray paint, which is not spray paint.
So this one is, Jesus, wait. This one here.
Yeah.
So it looks at, there are two screens that are cracked, and then it has, so they've got like large cracks in them. As you can see. And I looked at the cracked screens and how much they remind us that they exist, rather than just us seeing through them. So if we use the screen, we just look at the content. We don't actually notice the device itself. So for me, when it's kind of broken, it always reminds you that it's there, basically. Is this more clear, or?
Yeah, maybe. And also you mentioned it was a different kind of printing
Yeah.
process.
So then I looked at, you know, the eye floaters that we get sometimes? Like in the eye, like if you look around, you can see there is something
With
else.
light impressions.
Yeah, I think it's like a protein that does it.
Okay.
These little dots that you get when you look straight to the light, basically.
Yeah, but sometimes when you look away, there is something in your eye and you just can't focus on it. So I think it's like a protein that's basically byproduct of something. And so those eye floaters reminded me of these sensor dust on the camera. and then I tried using the shape that actually appears in my eye and print them on using UV printing on those sheets. So there is a lot of layers of like obstruction of objects. So you have these sheets that covering up the screen and partially the projection. So again, there's like obstruction of vision, and then the idea was to make these objects more kind of present in a sense.
Okay, but the projection is coming from behind now.
No, the projection is, so when you look at this image here, the projection is behind you.
Okay.
So it's projecting through these two, but again, it's kind of disrupted while it's projecting on the devices. So that was the idea basically behind this work.
And I have another question.
Yes.
More regarding your latest project, because you mentioned that gentrification is an issue that came to you also because you live in Malta.
Yeah, well, it's very similar, but I think what's different for me here in Lisbon is that, well, the image of the tiles is kind of very strong and very present, right? But, well, the tiles are on the facades, and those images are part of the commons. So you see it in the street, you can photograph it, and you can reproduce it. We've got similar kind of tiles in Malta, but they're usually indoor tiles. So you wouldn't be able to just photograph it.
It's more private. Because
It's-
actually
it's a
my
private thing.
curiosity was about if you can find if you have an imaginary similar to the one you are bringing about Lisbon relating to Malta, like if there is an object or something
Yeah.
very so produced, so
There would be no gentrification is like huge there, but well, there is also this facade obsession kind of, but it's really slightly different. There's more obsession with the skyline and the outdoor imagery. So from an image perspective, like
image with the sea, maybe.
yeah, like the sunsets, the skyline, this is more of a thing. But I feel in Lisbon, this image of this craft object is so much stronger than I've seen like in Malta maybe, or in, I don't know, maybe in Sicily as well. They would have this like their own little crafts. It's yeah. No, so the idea, because it has such a strong architectural element, the gentrification is often present because the facades are kind of the main focus point of this imagery
You don't need to get
consumption.
engaged to have an imaginary. It's there.
Yeah.
It's out there.
Yeah, exactly,
That's
yeah.
true.
But also I feel that what's behind the facade has been like hugely neglected. So the houses are not necessarily like here built for, or like maintained for people's comfort, but it's like the historic part is more important than the content where people live. I don't know if I'm right, it's just like an image that I've got.
I hope you're not right, but it's a good observation.
Hopefully not.
Might be right. Depends on the next election on 6th of October.
Uh-oh.
Let's see what happens.
You don't have your own private Nazis, no? No Portuguese Nazis.
No, luckily not.
No, there you go. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
You'll be okay. Yeah, no, in Malta there is this obsession with there is like a few harbor cities that are very old. So they've been photographed always from the same perspective, and that's just extremely exhausting. So there is again this oversaturatedness of the same image of the same church at the same time of the day, and it just never ends. But again, there is this difference between those patterns, that one is the private space, the other one is public space, which I find interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, more private question outside.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Letta? Can we just see the, I would like to see the video of this.
Yeah. Oh, this work actually, even in the space, it was not easy to understand. This is the view of it. So there's one, and there's this one. It's very short though, but
This video. It's all the video from the balcony.
this one here.
Yeah.
Well, it is the same one, but I always kind of because my background is in photography, so my first degree was in photography. So every time you have like a flaw, you know, when you film something or take a video, when there is like a dot on your sensor, it's considered being something like kind of a wrong thing. You failed in a sense. But that just sort of reminds you that you're using technology to create your project or your video or your photo. And I found that personally quite interesting, how it sort of makes it more present in a way. Sorry, there's sound.
It's like a reminder of the device that you're
Yeah.
using.
Yeah. So this one. Yeah. But so it's like, you know, a cracked screen is always something so common. And we still keep using phones with a cracked screen. I mean, not like we have to change them, but we see through them, although the screen like slightly reminds us that the device is there. But
It's interesting that you bring that, because I think we live in a world that we are already into the screen, you know. We are like, you know, those images in old cartoons that the character jumping into the screen. I have the feeling that we have already done that.
yeah, we quite
Like
absorb.
we can't separate it anymore, you know. So I think it's interesting when you bring some sort of reminder to that, but somehow living in a world that is already so contaminated by the screen.
But that's sort of also what neomateriality is. I mean, one of the other definitions is that the digital is embedded not only in the object but also in our behaviors, in a sense, and that sort of provides this change that there is no going back.
Sure, it's an
Whether it's-
extension of.
Another project I thought of doing is this, you know, TripAdvisor reviews for different cafes, and I was actually somewhere in Poland, one of the tourist cities. I'm not sure if it's Katowice or Wrocław. So when there was like 10 best, it's Budapest. 10 best restaurants. Of course, you don't speak the language, you don't know where to go. 10 best TripAdvisor cafes for breakfast or brunch. They had like queue of 200 people. You just go around the corner, you have like amazing spaces that are not even on Google Maps. Sitting there in a cafe and people would pass by, like, you know, when you sit like in the front window, just like on the bar chairs kind of. People would pass by like really shocked. They look at the phone, they look at the cafe, it's like it's not on your map. So then they look at the name, and everybody was doing it, and like every single person, they like have to double check if the name is in their digital reality, because, and they were kind of really cautious, like people kept going, like they didn't want to enter, because, and this cafe was like a tiny private run space, also part-time gallery sort of. Yeah, I found it really interesting how that just worked.
There's a cafe down the road that has the sign, try the worst coffee in the world, as one man on TripAdvisor said. but it's like, I mean, it totally relates to the kind of hyper. What do you call it?
Yeah. No, it's again these behaviors that are extremely influenced, and I'm gonna do eventually a project with TripAdvisor because it's just fascinating how that kind of rules the whole routes that people
But
take.
I think I also remind it's a really Western thing as well. Because I think you find a lot of, I mean, I think here maybe locals wouldn't do it as much as foreigners.
I
Like,
think it's
it's
probably
like
just the tourists who do it.
No, well, yeah, but I think it's a really UK thing. I don't think, you know, Germans, for example, are less on Facebook than other people.
Yeah.
And so you would find less like German reviews, and like here you have a lot of, you know, places which it's all just English reviews.
No, no.
I think it's also Instagram, isn't it? So if people see a picture of a nice bit of food, that influences, they want to go and eat that. And so any cafe that's got a big photographs,
Imagery.
and then you take a picture of your food and then you post that, and it's just a cycle.
Well, it's again how this like reality influences your behavior.
Exactly.
You know?
You should go to the worst cafe, the worst place in Lisbon.
But think about
And then
how many
advertise
cafes.
it, like on different accounts, and make like all the tourists go there and eat this worst food.
Yeah, there was a guy who did it for an English magazine. I'm sure it was ID or something. He created a fake restaurant in a shed in London, and he asked his friends to write fake TripAdvisor reviews.
Yeah.
He was eventually #1 restaurant.
And Google
Really?
reviews, people look at Google as well.
Yeah.
But you
You know
just
that
get
is
your
as well.
friend, you could just say, leave a 5-star review and I'll give you 10% off or something, and then that
Yeah.
as well.
But
Like,
You can buy
it's
likes.
so much easier. Yeah, you can also buy reviews, definitely.
Yeah, so some people in London just did like a fake Deliveroo takeaway with microwave food, and they signed up for it and they actually got proper orders.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's fascinating. No, but I'm wondering like
Really? And it was successful.
how many cafes are not
That's so
on Google Maps.
interesting.
Like, I want to know those cafes that are not even marked.
What happened with the Shed restaurant?
What?
What happened with the Shed restaurant?
With the Shed, what he did is, it's on YouTube, you can check it out, I think it's like 20-minute experiment. He had to actually open the restaurant at some point. So he invited his friends to buy like food from Tesco, and they microwaved it and dressed it up nicely. And he also asked his friends, or he hired extras to just sit pretending to be guests, because people kept calling to book a spot, and he like for months, and he had to say like, no, it's completely booked. So that even raised the hype even more basically. And then he had to open for one night. They would come in, I think,
He opened for one night.
from the real customers, there were like only between 2 or 4 people, something like that. It was like a garden next to a shed where he lived somewhere in like really random neighborhood. So they would go in and then they had this look like, yeah, this was amazing and like this is so great. But then you see the whole process.
Microwavable like Tesco lasagna.
Oh my god,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
so
yeah.
interesting. I love this.
And I think what
It's
really
brilliant.
struck me is he had a DJ play restaurant soundtrack.
Yeah.
Just like plates and butter and stuff and music.
No,
Is he an
this is-
artist?
I think he just writes for a magazine.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it's ID or Vice, one of them. If you just, I think it's Shed, restaurant in a shed or something like this. Yeah, it's on YouTube.
Okay.
Then he also did this project with people. No, he went to a market and bought some clothes, like random knockoff jeans, and went to Paris Fashion Week to advertise it as a new designer project. So I like this play a lot. With, yeah, it went. It was
Like somehow
interesting.
fiction and
Yeah. But playing with also this reality of value.
sure.
Keep watching my balcony. It's very little sky, so there's some sky. So, no. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
I need to switch the slides.
I feel like you're a star, you know.
Yeah. No, I mean, I chose like 3 works after like 12 that I wanted to show. Otherwise, it's going to be too long.
The restaurant was really tiny.
Yeah.
I would love it.
Okay. Now we can have drinks. Thank you, humans.
Sure. I shade you.
I need some darkness now. Oh, thanks. It's very helpful.
I really loved your Sims project.
Yeah?
Yeah, it was so interesting to me because at first I was like a bit frustrated by it.
It's deliberately kind of frustrating because it starts all the same.